What is up, everybody? It is your boy MaximusBlack with another real estate video. I've got some new technology, so you guys get to see my crappy drawing skills and writing skills. But I am a visual learner, and I thought, hey, let me go ahead and get this little pad and let me break down some real estate questions for you guys. I've had quite a few people ask me, not only on stream, but also in the comment sections of my last videos, what are the best ways to first get your rental property? So your very first rental property. And there are two main ways that I think are the best ways to get in. Obviously, I believe that the more, like if you can put 20% down, I think it's the best. Now, just so that you guys understand, I am Canadian. So the vast majority of my real estate portfolio is in Canada. I do have a part ownership stake in a 24-unit apartment building in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio, in the United States. But I am well adversed in Canadian real estate, and I would say I'm pretty knowledgeable in U.S. as well. I've studied it a great deal. In fact, the majority of the people that I watch and sort of mentors are all in the United States. And I will tell you this, real estate in the United States is just better than Canada on multiple levels. But just because if you're watching this and you're from the United States or you're from the UK or you're from Canada, the concepts still apply. Okay, so a lot of the stuff that I'm going to explain is going to be done probably on more of a Canadian side, but I will also mention US when it applies. So without further ado, I'm going to go over the two best ways or the easiest ways that you can get into real estate, especially if you're not a huge high income earner that's got a ton of extra cash that can just go out there and throw down 20% on a rental property and not really bat an eye about it. So here are two cost-effective ways and strategic ways to get into rental properties. Number one is house hacking. I think that this is the easiest way, the most affordable way, and I'm going to be honest, I think it's the smartest way as well to learn how to become a landlord and kind of get the ball rolling, okay? Now, what is house hacking? House hacking is where you buy a property and you live in it, but you also rent out the other units or rooms in that property. So, for example, if you have a single family house, all right, single family house that is 4 bedrooms, you're going to live in one and rent out 3. So you're going to rent out 3 of the units and you're going to live, or bedrooms, and you're going to live in one. This isn't for everybody, okay? Living with strangers, best case scenario, I think, would be living with friends. You know, maybe your mortgage payments are $2,000 a month and you've got 3 bedrooms and you can rent out each one of the bedrooms for $500 a room to your close buddies, college friends, university friends, family members, brother, sister, whatever. That can work. I personally wouldn't be all into putting up rooms on Craigslist or Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace and just having strangers live. You have no idea where that's going to go, and it's not something I'd sign up for, but there are people and personalities that enjoy that sort of thing. Hey, whatever floats your boat, go for it. But also, instead of just renting by the room, you can buy a duplex, triplex, or a quad. Anything over 5 units or more is considered commercial. Anything 40 units or under is considered residential. So we're going to be talking about residential here. So for example, if you were to buy a duplex, you have unit 1 and unit 2. So you have 2 units. You're going to live here and you're going to rent out the top, okay? What this allows you to do is you're going to get a duplex. It still is residential, so you can put 5% down. Here in Canada, if you're in the U.S., I think it's 3.5% for first times. And then depending on, I think there's like, if you're in military and stuff, you might actually be able to put 0% down. I'm not an expert in that, so I don't really want to discuss that. But for first-time home buyers, at least here in Canada, 5%. in the United States, 3.5%. And you can, of course, you can put down more. I mean, if you put down 20%, you don't have to get private insurance. So like the banks force you, they basically need insurance in case, you default, essentially. When you put 20% down on a property, there's enough meat on the bone that the banks know that, hey, if you default, we can just repossess this property, sell it, and get all of our money back, no problem. So if you're only putting 5% down, you're going to have an extra insurance payment on top of that, but we won't get too into that. But for this video, say 5%, you're going to live in one, rent out one. So you might be able to rent out the top unit. Say you really want to maximize, and say the top unit is a 2-bedroom and the bottom unit is a 1-bedroom. So perhaps you can rent out the top unit for $1,500 a month, and then you're living in the bottom unit. And perhaps your monthly payment is, say, $3,000 a month, okay? But you're getting $1,500 a month in rent, which means now you're only spending $1,500 a month. So they're paying half of your mortgage, and you're going to be stress test if you can even afford that first initial $300 or that $3,000 a month payment. Now, I'm pulling numbers out my ass here. That payment could be $2,200 a month. It could be $4,500 a month. It could be $1,800 a month. I don't know where you live, right? So I don't know if the duplex you're buying is $200,000, $500,000, or $1 million. Okay, I don't know, but I'm just giving you sort of what that is, because this could be $1 million property, and the top unit could be going for $3,500 a month, so on and so forth, right? But just keeping this simple. So what you're doing now is you're saving $1,500 a month, right? So you're saving this $1,500 a month. And when you save $1,500 a month, right, and you times that, 1,500 times 12, so now you are saving $18,000 a year, okay? And now you're able to save up more money. Clearly, you've been able to save to get into your first property to begin with. So now, as long as you're still saving, you were saving before, now you're saving more. Now, you might say, well, Jeff, that $18,000 a year, I got to pay taxes on that because I'm getting income. It's true. Now, I'm not a chartered accountant. I'm not here to give you tax advice, but there are things you do in real estate, like depreciating your property, so you can claim depreciation. You're going to claim all of the things. If you had to do any maintenance work, you're going to be claiming that on your taxes. So you're going to be writing off your expenses to your income. And there's so many different things that you can do where you can virtually pay zero income tax on the money that you're making. Okay, so this is a great way to get into your first property, is by house hacking. And you've just got to be willing. Now, this, instead of a duplex, this could be a triplex, right? This could be 3 different units, right? Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3. And maybe you're living in the top unit and you're renting out the other 2 units. And if your mortgage payment is $3,000 a month, okay, and this is getting, $1,000 here and $1,000 here, that's $2,000. Now you're only $1,000 out of pocket, right? But you could afford the $3,000 a month. So now you're saving $2,000 a month. 2,000 times 12 is 24 grand a year instead of the 18. You guys understand where I'm going with that? All right. Now, what does it take to get into that first property though, right? So now we're actually going to talk numbers a little bit. So just for easy numbers, we'll say it's $500,000 duplex, okay? $500,000 duplex. At 5% down, right, you're going to need $25,000 in cash for the down payment, okay? So clearly you had to save some money before. Maybe your parents are helping you. Maybe, you've graduated university or college. Maybe they're going to help you with down payment. Maybe you've just been saving up. You've been living in an apartment. Maybe you're still living at home with your parents, whatever the case may be. I don't know. But you've come up with a 25 grand for the down payment, right? Because you're doing 5% down. Now, if you're doing 20% down, okay, you're going to need 100 grand, right? Because 20% of 500K is 100,000 and 5% is 25,000. Okay? So it's a pretty big difference, right? But if you put the 20% down, your mortgage payments are going to be lower, clearly, because you're not borrowing as much debt, okay? And you also don't need that extra insurance as well that the banks require if you're doing under 20%, which can save you a couple $100 a month, whatever the case may be. Okay, so that's just that. But that isn't the only costs. There are closing costs. And a lot of people don't take this into consideration. There are closing costs. Now, what are closing costs? There is a decent amount of them. And it's usually about 2 to 3% of the actual purchase price. Okay, so for example, here in Nova Scotia, there is a land transfer tax, which is like 1.5%. It's really, it's 1.5% of the purchase price. So, it could be $7,500 on this, $500,000 purchase, but you've got land transfer tax, okay? You've got home inspection. I am really not a good typer on these, but you're getting it. You've got your appraisal fees, legal fees, title insurance. And then, of course, you've got that mortgage insurance. If, of course, you're not putting down, if you're not putting down 20%. And then you've got adjustment fees. A lot of people don't talk about this in videos, and this has stung me a couple of times. What are adjustment fees? So adjustment fees are if, for example, they have prepaid their taxes in advance, or so we're talking taxes. Maybe there's oil heating or propane heating, right? So oil, we'll just call it heating, right? So if you have an oil tank and they've already filled it up $500, $1,000, they're going to want to recoup that because that wasn't part of the purchase price of the home, right? So, there are these little things, and like they could have just prepaid their taxes, and this can add up. I mean, this could be an extra $2,000 right there, right? So that's why between all of these fees, you're looking at about 2 to 3% of the purchase price. So let's just go ahead and say you're going to need that $25,000 or that $100,000, and then you're going to add 2%. So, we're going to say, 2% of 500K. Let's just say another $10,000. All right. Might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less. It all depends on your province, your state. All right. I'm just doing this very quick, just so that you understand that it's not just, I got 25%. Okay, I'm going to go buy this house now. And now I have no money, no reserves, no nothing. No, you're screwed. Okay. Don't do that. Make sure that you have money ready. So it's an extra 10. So instead of, you're still putting 5% down, but instead of the 25K, you're now in for 35,000. And instead of the 100,000, you're out in for 110,000. Okay. Now you have that. And of course, you're also going to want to have reserves. Okay. So depending on when you're buying, how you're buying the property, in order to rent it out, maybe it's turnkey and it's ready to go, but maybe you have to change some of the floors. Maybe you have to replace an appliance or two. I don't know. Maybe it's new windows. Couldn't tell you what it is. But you're going to want to have reserves. All right. And I typically like to have 3 months of what it would cost to operate the building. So, for example, say everything costs you $3,000 a month. You're going to want to have, at least me, I'm going to want to have $9,000 in reserves ready to go in case something goes, right? So for this case, you might want to actually have, we'll say at least 40 grand, right? You don't necessarily need the full 3 months, but the safer you are, the better. If you're a high-income earner, you've got a good W-2 job, you're a good saver, you've just got money, extra money and stuff. You don't have to be as anal about this, but for people that are really just trying to just get in, you don't really have a great fallback. In my opinion, you shouldn't be in real estate to begin with. But if you are, if you've got enough conviction for it and you can handle that, you should honestly have at least 2 months. 3 months is like, hey, if something goes down, I've got plenty of time to get a new tenant, all this stuff. Guys, I operate on the side of caution and being prepared for doomsday, right? COVID's happened. You might get a bad tenant. I know I had a bad tenant on my very first tenant, which I'll tell you guys about in another video, that cost me a few $1,000. Please be prepared and have reserves, all right? So, you might want to go into this with $40,000 all in, and then this one you might want to go in with 120. Okay, and that's just reserves. That makes it so that, like, hey, you can sleep at night. If somebody calls you and, hey, my hot water tank broke, you've got money there, you're ready to go. I mean, even if you have a month's worth of reserves, it's still a nice relief. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so I know this was a lot of information and it's kind of messy here, but I'm a visual learner. That's sort of what you're looking at a 5% and a 20%. Now, when you're in here, now you have a property and you're living there. Now, here's the amazing part, okay? You've already now are making this extra $18,000 a year, right? You can save up pretty quick. Maybe you're in this property for a few years, and now you're able to move out of that duplex or triplex or quad that you bought, and now you're renting out that unit, and now everything is being paid for by the tenants, and you're cash flowing a little bit more. And now you can get into maybe your single family home that you want to live in, or maybe you decide to stay in that duplex and buy another duplex or triplex with this money that you've been making for the down payment, and you just kind of rinse and repeat, and you keep on going. Not only that, you're now a homeowner. Okay, so not only are you making that, say, $18,000 a year, right, in that income, right, that you're saving, but now you're also you're making money from appreciation. So if your property is worth $500,000, and every year, in your area, your properties go up, say, 3% a year, that's an extra 15 grand a year in appreciation. Okay. Then on top of that, you've got your principal pay down. So if your mortgage payment is, say, that $3,000, maybe 1,000 of that is going towards the principal, right? So that's another, if it's 1,000 a month, that's another $12,000 a year. You see how this is adding up, right? So, you take the 15,000 plus the 18,000 plus the 12,000, and suddenly you're looking at about $45,000 a year in income or net worth add or equity that you wouldn't have been getting otherwise. And this stuff can snowball. Like, this can really start to snowball. And as your tenants pay down your mortgage year after year, and remember, your rents are going to go up. You're going to do your yearly rental increase. That might be 2%, 5%, whatever your local laws allow you to. And as your rents start to go up and your debt starts to go down, that spread becomes even bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't want to get too high level in this, and I don't want this to go too deep. We can discuss these things a little bit more in detail with real numbers instead of these hypotheticals. But this is the power of real estate. This is the power of holding your properties for a long period of time. And of course, you got to make sure that when you're doing this, that if your tenants don't pay, that you can afford to pay that mortgage payment nonetheless, right? Or something breaks and you have those reserves. Now, that is one way to get in. That's house hacking. It's the easiest way. It's a great way to start subsidizing some of your monthly living expenses so that you can save quicker to start snowballing, and then also building equity through principal pay down and, of course, your appreciation. And we didn't even talk about the tax write-offs and the benefits tax-wise of doing that as well. That's for another video. Here's the other way that you can do. So the second way to get into your first rental, and that's you already own a property, all right? So you're already an owner of a single family, okay? Maybe you bought this house 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. Maybe it got handed down to you by your family, whatever the case may be, and say this property is worth $1 million, okay? I know what you're saying. Whoa, Jeff, $1 million. Whoa, who am I? I'm doing this for round hole numbers, so the math is easy. It could be a $500,000 house. It could be a $200,000 house. It could be a $100,000 house. It could be a $3 million property. I don't know. But we're just going to say it's worth $1 million, but you still owe $600,000 on the property, okay? So if it's worth $1 million and you owe $600K, that means you have $400,000 in equity, okay, in the property, all right? And that's just sitting there. You can't really tap into it. You know, it's just locked up, sitting there, basically dying. But when you have that much equity, you know, your mortgage payments are lower. If you owed $800,000, your mortgage payments are higher. And we're going to talk about this, but what a lot of people do, all right, and I've done this, is you tap into that equity to go and buy a rental property, okay? So how do you tap into that $400,000 in equity? It's something called a refinance, a refi. Oops. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, refis is the name of the game. Refinancing properties is what allows you to scale without having to go and work a W-2 job, saving up a whole bunch of money, and then buying the next one, doing the same thing. You can do that, and it's safe, you know, but it takes a long time. You can't scale. The beautiful thing about when you start owning a bunch of rental properties is, as, again, your tenants are paying down the mortgage, the property is going up in value, your rents are going up year after year, so you're getting more cash flow. You can start taking this pile of money and tapping into it and then going out and purchasing another property. So when you refi, you're going to go to the bank and you're going to say, hey, bank, I want to tap into this $400,000 in equity. Well, the bank will not give you more than an 80% LTV. All right. What's an LTV? Loan to value. So if your property is worth $1 million, they will, and they're going to stress test you and stuff, right? They're going to make sure that you can handle the new payment, but they will loan you up to 80% of the value of the property. So you're going to get that appraised. Maybe you've owned this property for 10 years. Maybe when you bought it, you paid $700K for it. I don't know, but now it's worth $1 million. And they're going to loan up to 80%. So 80% of $1 million is $800,000. All right. So that would be your new mortgage. Okay. That's going to be your new mortgage instead of the 600. Remember, before you were at 6, now you are at 8,000 or 800,000. Now you have $200,000 left off. Because remember, you had some equity into the property. They're obviously not going to give you the full $400,000 in equity because they still want you to have 20% in there in case you default. They got to repossess the property, so on and so forth. But they're willing to do up to $800,000, which leaves you $200,000 left over for the refinance, and they're going to wire you or write you a check for $200,000 in cash. The great thing about this is it's tax-free. This is not income. This is debt. All right? This is debt, which means you don't pay tax on it. So don't be a moron, all right, and do what I did and went out and bought a fancy car. But I did that many, like 10 years after doing many refinances and stuff. But in this case, you're going to want to go buy your first rental property or maybe your next rental property. So remember, just like up top, now you have $200,000 to play with, okay? Now you're going to go out and buy that duplex, right? Or a similar, maybe it's a triplex, a quad, whatever, and you can no longer put down 5% because it's your second property. So this strategy is no longer usable, but you can sure as shit do the 20% down on your next property. So again, if you bought a $500,000 duplex, you put $100,000 down of that $200K. Whoops. Of that $200K, you're spending $100 of it. Remember, you've got all those closing costs. We're going to add another $10,000 onto that. All right. Maybe a little bit more. And then you've got reserves. Let's just go ahead and say $50,000. Right? For closing costs, repairs, and reserves. For when you buy this, that's $150,000. You still have $50,000 in cash left over for whatever, right? But here's the catch. Now that you've taken out $200,000 more, your personal mortgage for your original home is going to go up. All right? You're going to be borrowing $200,000 more. Typically, for every $100,000 that you're borrowing, say at 4%, you're adding a little over $500 more a month in monthly payments. So we'll say at $200,000, you might have added an extra, we'll say $1,200 a month. I don't know what the interest rates are and whatnot, but you may have added an extra $1,200 a month onto your original payment. Okay, so if you were paying before $3,500 a month for your mortgage payments, suddenly now you're going to be spending $4,700. Oh my God, I got to get used to this thing. You're now spending, so plus $1,200, you're now spending $4,700 a month for that $1 million property. Now, can you afford that extra $4,700 a month? Only you know, right? But remember, you've now got that extra $50,000 sitting in behind. After you've done your closing costs, your down payment, your repairs, maintenance, all that stuff, and reserves, that $50,000 can help offset this. But not only that, if you've bought right, you just don't go and buy any property. Clearly, you are going to go buy a rental property that's going to make you money in cash flow, right? That cash flow, hopefully, will be more than what you have paid, that you're paying extra each month. So if your payments are now an extra $1,200 a month, maybe that property that you bought is bringing in that extra $1,200 a month to offset that. Or maybe it's less, but remember, you are now building, you're doing principal pay down. So your two tenants in that duplex are paying down your mortgage. You're now getting appreciation. Maybe it's 3%, 5% a year on that purchase price. And of course, you're getting that cash flow as well, right? So maybe the cash flow is only $500 a month, right? Yeah, $500 is not going to cover $1,200, but is that principal pay down? Is that appreciation? So on and so forth. That in the long term is going to pay for more. And then after, 4 or 5 years, maybe you bought the duplex and it's a fixer-upper, and you put money into it, you get the rents up, and now you've raised the value of that. Maybe then you can tap into that and then pull out money, kind of like what you did with this $1 million property, and then repay down your mortgage on your main house, or maybe then you're going to take that, and instead of doing that, you're going to go buy another rental property. That, my friends, is the two easiest ways to get into your first rental property. Tapping into the equity of your current home, or buying a first-time home buyer at 5% down. If you're in the States, 3.5%, whatever it is over there. Maybe you even just opt to not do the 5% and do 20%, and you house hack and you start building up and you live there for 2 years, 3 years. Maybe it's 5 years. I don't know your situation, right? Again, these are rough numbers. Everything is different, but the strategy is the same. This is how it works. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about these strategies. Have you done these strategies? I haven't done house hacking personally, but I have taken equity out of my personal property and other rental properties to go and buy other rental properties. And that's how you snowball. Yes, you are taking on more debt, and with more debt comes more risk. But the banks are going to stress test you to make sure that you can handle these payments, and only you really know, if this is the right way to go for you. Don't be so quick to just take money off of your house to just go buy a rental property to do it, right? You want to make sure that you find the right deal, you have the right strategy, and that is going to cash flow, make money, appreciate. Maybe you can do a value add, a BRRRR strategy that I've talked about previously. There has to be strategy involved. You just can't take money out and just go buy a property and hope that it cash flows. You got to analyze the deal, have a plan and a strategy, but these are ways that you can tap into equity and start snowballing and scaling. And I'm telling you, once you get to 2, 3, 4, 5 properties, this thing really starts to snowball, and it can get to the point where you decide to stop taking on more debt and you start to aggressively pay down each specific property. I'm going to talk about all of these different strategies in many different videos coming up. If you guys find value in this, do me a favor, hit the like button. This is time consuming. I'm putting a lot of time and effort into this. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this series. If you have any questions at all, put them in the comment section below. Did I miss something? Let me know in the comments. There's no edits, there's no cuts. This is just me riffing off the top and showing you guys a couple of strategies on how to get into your first rental property. All right, guys, thank you so much. It's your boy Maximus Black. Peace out.